So thanks for having me. My name is Reed Sarosi. I'm based here in Raleigh. And like Scott, I'm a Code for America Brigade captain that co-leads a Raleigh initiative. I also work for a company that supports open data initiatives within state and local. The company is Citygram. I'm a data solutions architect, so I get into the weeds very early in the process, supporting government from Puerto Rico to Delaware. I appreciate Scott inviting me up here. So Jim Van Fleet is a buddy of mine. Actually just sent him a tweet earlier saying, if you mind if I do this cover for you. What I did is I found a presentation that one of my colleagues created on Citygram because he forked the project. To describe what fork means is you take a project and then you kind of make it your own, but you're still using the base code. And he forked this project and he gave a presentation. So I've never given this presentation before, neither has Scott, but we're going to do this together and go from here.
Let's start here or start with the website?
Let's go with the website. So what I was thinking was, let's give you some context of what is Citygram, and then we'll back up and kind of describe, how it's made, what it's for, what's the purpose, and things of that nature. So from this website on citygram.org, Scott's going to go ahead and click on your city, and we're going to select Charlotte and keep it hyper-local here in North Carolina. So several cities have participated in the Citygram program by deploying the software and pointing to their portal. So the first thing that you do as a citizen, because this is essentially a citizen-facing tool, is that you come here and you select a topic that you genuinely care about and you want to learn more about. I mean, in our presentation, we'll talk about the why, what we're trying to solve here, but just for a quick demo, they're going to go ahead and select one of these topics. Just keep in mind, these topics actually align with a specific data set on your open data portal. Carter, when you were talking about your open data portal, you were talking about some of your data sets, they would align with some of those topics. The next step is, where do I live? Where do I work? You then put in an address. Pick on me. It's better to do Raleigh, but do 505 Holden, or if you want to do your address.
That's good.
So from there, I'll put in the address, and then on the far right, you can select your radius.
Is this Raleigh then, or
Raleigh.
Or do we have a Charlotte? Anybody have a Charlotte address?
What's a Charlotte address? Or Tryon is an easy one. You can do 100 Tryon.
Okay.
You should be able to hit enter, and it should be going in. Is it working for you? Yeah. All right.
There's just this.
Just go ahead and hit 100 Tryon and hit enter. See what happens. That's too bad.
Come on.
What's that? There we go. Okay. So this is where Scott lives. And Scott really wants to know about all the things that are happening with one of those topics that he selected. But he wants to kind of create the radius around him. So from that drop-down box to the right, where it says within 1/10 mile, he can then kind of grow his scope of what he wants to listen to with things of that nature related to that topic. So essentially, he's going to go ahead and select that radius. And, in good Code for America fashion, we've had fun with it, where we nickname some of the radiuses with, how far out it is. Now, scrolling down, the next thing that Scott's going to do is he's going to set up how he wants to listen to this topic. Does he want to set up a text alert, or does he want to set up emails? And so go ahead and do text. Scott will go ahead and put in his personal text number. This is your opportunity to write it down also. And he's now going to be officially enrolled into the Citygram program. On his phone, he'll say, welcome to the club. If you want to unsubscribe, you do this. But then going forward, he will continue to receive text alerts. What topic did you select?
I chose land development.
Land development. Every time there's a new land development row added to a data set, he will then get a text alert in real time in theory. So that was a quick demonstration of what is Citygram. Now we can jump into the presentation.
All right. Let's see.
I got to click over here, so once you help me get off here.
All right. Yeah. Thanks. I
I
can't see you down here, so. All right. There we go.
So like we said, we're kind of like we forked a presentation here that we found online. But Scott did a great job, and many of you also participated in What is Code for America. But the bottom line is essentially this Citygram was a Code for America fellowship project for the city of Charlotte and technically also for Lexington. So Code for America is interesting. It's this organization that has different pillars. One of the pillars is their fellowship program, where it's essentially Peace Corps for Peace, where they're deployed into City Hall and they're challenged to find this underlying problem that City Hall wants to fix. And these fellows, they spend about the first month in residency within City Hall, meeting with people with whiteboard strategy, you name it, and then they're responsible for kind of finding that problem and then creating a path forward on how they're going to solve it, working very closely. So this is the fellowship team from Charlotte that is the brains behind what we saw on Citygram. And then I would also say that Code for America then also has the brigade pillar, which is more of kind of the hyper-local grassroots initiatives that we were just talking about earlier. And jump in.
Yeah, Jim Van Fleet is the captain of that pillar. Unfortunately, he couldn't make it this morning, but yeah, that's where we're at. So,
oh yeah, for my ground, look at this one. Yeah, it's to the right, and down here. Yeah, so in our demonstration, I think we've kind of covered what is Citygram, but essentially what we're talking about is receiving notifications based on an open data set that the government has chosen to open up, where the information has to be geo-referenced, right? So it's pretty hard to set up a Citygram alert on a potential financial budget if there's no actual reference to where that happens. So keep in mind that's part of what's required. So let's talk a little bit about what makes a good data set candidate for Citygram. Well, one, it's supposed to be citizen focused. We talked about that. So in Charlotte, one of the reasons that they built this was that in their 1 month of residency, there was a lot of talk about trying to solve the classic citizen engagement issues. Citizens feel out of the loop. Citizens don't get the right information. If they do choose to get the right information, sometimes they're saturated by the city of Charlotte with too much information. So how do you solve some of those problems? I'm probably not even doing the recap justice, but that's in my impression at a high level. What makes a good data set candidate? Well, it needs to be constantly updated. If you look at like the top 10 principles of open data, one of them is this concept of a data set has to be timely. I think in government, especially in my work, we do a good job of getting that CSV or maybe pushing out a shapefile to our open data portal one time, and then we let it sit there stale for a year. That's a horrible thing to do. So it has to be timely. It has to be constantly feeding from that system of record within government and populating that data set so Citygram can look for changes and send out alerts. API enabled, folks. Put that data in PDF. You're not doing yourself a lot of help. Put that data into an Excel file and post it on your website. It's not going to help. So the data set has to be API enabled. The presentation that you just gave, API enabled, perfect example. Last one here has to be both time and geo-component. We kind of talked about that a little earlier. It has to have that kind of black long and a timestamp. Any other thoughts?
yeah, and one of the great things about a product like Citygram is it's all about hyper-local, because while you might be interested in all the developments happening in Charlotte, you're probably care most about what's happening in like the 3 or 4 blocks around your house, right? Especially if you're downtown and there's stuff happening. You want to be notified. Maybe you want to be notified when there's crime activity within a quarter mile of your house. You probably don't want to get every crime report for the entire city, or you just get blown away that saturation of data for information. So that's one great thing about Citygram is it's sort of that hyper-local focus.
Yeah, I was just studying this diagram so I could figure out how to explain it to you guys. Okay, so the way the Citygram actually worked from a stack or from an architectural perspective, what we're looking at here on the far left is essentially all of the data stores that are, let's back up a little bit, sorry. All the different departments, there are data stewards that live within Parks and Rec, public safety, and so on. And they are exposing data that they feel that can serve the public. And so they're pushing data from their internal systems to a particular open data portal that maybe government has gotten behind. Again, it would be harder to build here, as Wade kind of just demonstrated. And then once the data is on the open data portal, from there, Citygram is now in this constant like ETL process. It's like going out, pulling data, it's potentially transforming it, and then loading it into the Citygram app. If I remember correctly, when Citygram was being constructed, the city of Charlotte wasn't quite there yet with the big circle. They didn't have the open data portal. So the fellowship team was using cities like Seattle's open data portal to kind of build that POC. I believe they were originally, they were originally pulling in JSON and then converting it to GeoJSON, or it was the other way around, so I don't have that correct. But I do know that Citygram can connect to either Geo or JSON and be able to make the transformation into their application for those that are kind of thinking about this from a technical perspective. Then obviously the end result is that once the data is on the platform for Citygram, then it's sending those emails or text alerts to the active citizen here within your city. This last part here, this is kind of cool because this is just, again, in the weeds, but you know, what we're showing here is these were that proof of concept that the fellowship team was looking at. They were pointing to all kinds of raw data sets that have been normalized from all these different open data portals. I think I see Lexington, I see Seattle, and these were literally all either GeoJSON or JSON endpoints from an array of different open data portal vendors. I will say that obviously normalizing the data is incredibly important. You know, Citygram can't point to a database that's, you know, the data is skewed across 16 tables and then bring it together. So that's kind of the point there.
And then one of the nice things about Citygram is it takes all that information that's in this GeoJSON format, it essentially transforms it into human readable text, right? So this is what you would actually get on your phone when you get a notification that, in my case, now I'm subscribed. So when any development project takes place within a quarter mile of 100 Tryon or wherever that was, I'm going to now get a notification on my phone until I unsubscribe. But it turns it into real human readable, understandable information as opposed to the GeoJSON.
So a little bit about Code for America and the Fellowship Project. This is highlighting the summit. So I talked about, like, so fellows are assigned to a city, let's say on Jan 1. They spend all of February getting really really close with City Hall. And then they go back to San Francisco where Code for America has their headquarters, and all these different fellows that kind of bring their minds together and their skill sets. Like you mentioned, I'm a GIS person, so that GIS person complements this designer, which complements this programmer. And they work on it throughout the entire year, and then in October is this big party. And each city with their fellows, that's Twyla McDermott from the city of Charlotte on the far right, with the fellow on the far left, and they give that presentation of Citygram that you just saw. So I don't know what we're doing on time, but this presentation was kind of about how New York City said, is a really cool project, we want that too. So the local brigade decided to fork Citygram and make it their own and deploy it into New York City all by themselves. In fact, it was a little awkward. I love the stories, and it was a little awkward because Charlotte hadn't launched their Citygram quite yet because they didn't have their open data program yet, which is cool. It's fine. But New York kind of was like, the code was on GitHub, and they just went ahead and launched it before Charlotte did. I was kind of like, oh, that's awkward, but I love to get back at the stories. So, but that's kind of the beauty of the story, though. There, and this is a little bit about how the civic community started like exploring this this project. And I see Danny there. Danny was one of the fellows at Charlotte, and Danny's proactively sharing information. Next, this was the GitHub repository that the brigade in New York forked Citygram into. So again, you can take a look at it as well. I have no idea what's next.
Yeah, go out there and fork it yourselves. We actually, Dave and I were at that meeting with Charlotte when Twyla was giving that presentation. And we went up to Charlotte and we just sort of threatened them. We said, we're going to go back and launch this before you guys do. we didn't actually succeed with that. But anyway, we got derailed on another project.
Yeah. I think this is just a little bit of, we can keep moving forward. This is a little bit of email conversation between a New York Brigade member and the fellows, just asking how to set it up and getting kind of that online up, and we can keep moving forward. So this is something that we're talking about. And this is a little bit about what on the back end for those that are developers or have the IS background. This was the stack that was involved for setting up New York City's Fort Citygram. This is probably them showing off their code base. From what I can tell really quick, it's in Ruby and it's running constant jobs, and you're using Twilla to send out those text alerts. Go to next. Again, this is a quick screenshot of the end result within New York City, going from a data set, a row of record, to building it into a template that's human speak. So you're going from machine to human speak, presented in a text message. We also, this is the email side, so you don't necessarily have to get text alerts. I was talking to Carter about it. I've been scared about setting this up because I don't want to get like 15 building permit text messages when at 3 o'clock in the morning because the City of Raleigh is updating their open data portal. So another option would be something like email, a little bit less noisy and not immediate, right on the front of my phone with these. And this is kind of cool. This is my favorite part. This is when the brigade really does a great job of partnering with their city. And so the city embraced it and held an official launch date, as you can see here, at a New York City Council hearing on open data. Some of the issues that the brigade in New York City kind of saw was there was a lot of frequency updates with a lot of their data sets, so it kind of goes back to potentially a very noisy cell phone constantly going off if you subscribe to some very busy data sets. See if there's anything else here that needs a little bit of help. I think they were talking about aggregation of the data makes sense because every time a data set row gets added, an alert sends out, so they were kind of thinking it would make a lot more sense that you can aggregate data together and then send out one single message, right? So I think totally makes sense.
One thing about getting involved with Code for America is the word fork will become a verb in your vocabulary, so you'll start forking things, and you'll feel great when you hear people talking about forking. But there's essentially a lot of excitement when people build these projects and they get forked, or they get essentially borrowed and implemented somewhere else, redeployed in another city or location. And I know everybody gets really excited about that. And there's stuff out there you could, like for example, you can go fork Citygram today and start building it for your own community. And then if you start building stuff on GitHub, people will fork your code and deploy it elsewhere in their communities as well. So it's a great learning experience, great opportunity to sort of build relationships and collaboration, and just build capacity and able to deliver more to your citizens. So I would like, before we go to questions, I would like you all to give Reese Rogue a huge hand. He can, without expecting to do a presentation. Questions about Citygram? We'll try to more Code for America.
Actually, I'll actually give a plug for Code for America. So the other half of what I do for the county is innovation. So I have two sides of it, I do data and innovation. And so I'm regularly checking out Code for America. Anybody who works in government here, you need to go to their website and look at the applications that have been developed. There's dozens of them over time. Particularly if you have any ability to do open source internally, there's some, it's got the story, you understand where it came from, they solve a lot of problems that are meaningful to any government, so I would check out their application repository. The code itself is available for free. Getting it in, they have resources that might be able to help you, and that might cost, but it's a great resource overall.
Yeah, a lot of these Code for America fellowship projects, and I think I saw Nick Dorn talking about Boston Bike Reps earlier. He was a Code for America fellow in Macon, Georgia in 2012, I believe. I don't see him in the audience, but he's around. But these fellowship projects have created some really awesome products like Citygram. I mean, we're talking, there's about 12 to 15 fellowships a year in different cities across the country, and there has been some really amazing work to come out of these. And the best ones have actually turned into startup businesses. And some of the fellows go off and they launch a business The code is all free, so if you're a really good developer and you've got the capacity to build it yourself, you can do that, and it won't cost you anything other than the infrastructure to set it up on. However, if you're not that person or that organization, there are these startups that have launched from Code for America, and essentially what they do is provide these same tools as a service. So they will do all the heavy lifting for you and get it set up. You know, there's a charge for it, but it's not unreasonable, and you get really top tier customer-focused applications that you can deploy and tie in with your open data initiatives. And I actually want to throw in one more comment, because Reed will never toot his own horn, but in addition to being a volunteer for Code for America, he also works for Socrata, which is one of the I guess, forefront companies out there that's promoting open data and has an open data platform of their own. I know Raleigh, North Carolina uses Socrata, as well as other cities like Chicago and Austin, Texas. There's a whole bunch out there. So I encourage you to check out Socrata's website if you're interested and just need help with open data. There are open source alternatives, but again, some places that's just not an option. You don't have the capacity, and there are. I hope it's okay to give a plug, but Reed deserves it because he won't do it himself. So, anyways, check out Citygram. Thanks. Any other questions?
That's a really good question, and we haven't dealt with it yet. So, you know, we're more in the phase where we're encouraging use of the services. If that were to happen, I think at some of the sessions I've seen here, you know, they talk about how quickly you can stand up Amazon Web Services or a cloud-hosted solution that scales would probably be the strategy to handle that.
I'll actually touch on that in terms of why from a broad open data perspective, we're partnering with Esri on this, is that within GIS, we already have capacity and ability and data management resources and things like that. So our ability to handle something like that in our learning period is much higher with a tool like Esri, where we've got a lot of knowledge, a lot of capacity and resources than it would be. Data management as part of open data is a huge question that we're trying to figure out for things outside of the GIS arena, because it's already been solved there. So that's how we mitigated that a little bit.
Anybody else? Yes.
Had a question or would like a plug for the next Triangle Open Data event or community, whichever one comes next, that people can come to and get acquainted with the community if they're not involved. And I definitely want to encourage, especially GIS people, because the mix of skill sets is so valuable. So can you give a plug for the next day if you know Reed?
Is there an event coming up?
Sure, actually, I guess I can cover this. So if you're interested in health data, I believe there's one in March specifically geared towards health. Brett is running that a little bit, right? Do you know more about that?
The health?
Yeah. Okay. There's Data Jam is coming up in May, middle of May, and then of course Citycamp is coming up in May. So you can talk more about Citycamp.
So think of Citycamp as an on-conference.
Citycamp is a national unconference where citizens typically come together and they pitch ideas or problems that they see within their community. And then from that unconference, people kind of band together around some of those really popular problems that have been pitched by citizens, and technology designers, GIS experts kind of use their talents and skill sets to potentially build a project during this weekend event, and then demonstrate their POC on the very last day of the event. And they go for a couple cash prizes with the best app. Our first year actually had the best project. A citizen came in and said, "I love our greenways in Raleigh, but I get lost because when it goes this way, I don't know what that means when it goes that way." And where's the nearest parking lot? If I have a little child who needs to use the bathroom, where's the nearest public restroom? And so at the end of the 2.5-day City Camp event in Raleigh, a physical app appeared in the iTunes App Store called the Our Greenway that helps citizens navigate those channels.
Yeah. Also, I think it's the first, it's either the end of May or first weekend of June. I think it might be
It's the same weekend.
same weekend as the City Camp. There's a national event called the National Day of Civic Hacking. And keep your eyes open, or check actually you just Google National Day of Civic Hacking. All the events around the country will be listed on there. I know we've hosted one in Asheville for the last 2 years. The City Camp happens in Raleigh. But it's also just a great sort of nationally focused thing that is usually thematically based. So in Asheville, we've done one on food insecurity, one on multimodal transportation, and we're just now, actually our next meetup, we're going to start debating what the topic's going to be for this year's event. And we try to get as much community input as possible and get community partners involved as well. So it's not just about technologists, it's about people that really understand the problems and can help sort of guide the solutions. And then we have the technologists in the room that can help build those solutions. So check out National Day of Civic Hacking. Again, end of May 1st. It's a weekend event around the end of May, 1st of June. But there'll be great opportunities there to get engaged.
And then North Carolina Day of the Wizard is the 16th of May, so that's the other big one.
Right.
That's pretty cool.
And then also just the meetups. So there's 3 brigades just in this area alone. So go on meetup.com, look for Code for America Brigade, and you will find those brigade meetups, and you can go and get involved with projects that are happening probably this week or next. I mean, usually it's a couple of meetings a month. So it's a great way to get involved and actually help to have some input in terms of what these big national events, how they actually formulate. So you can get involved right away. All right. Well, thank you all again. I think lunch